PHDIM website. We appreciate you tuning in today, and we appreciate you participating with us. And today we have a very unique purpose to be here today. We are talking about why the millennials. We're talking about the millennial invasion, and this is a Millennial Symposium. There are several misnomers. There are a plethora of things that are being said concerning the emergence of the millennial generation, Generation Y, the millennials. However, it has been casted, and the difficulty that may arise as it relates to leadership and the changing over of the guard, and in every sector of our community, church, government, education, even the healthcare industry. And so there has also been some conversation around crime and violence and drug abuse and some of the things that we see emerging in many of the communities that are just inundated with the pathos that seems to bring a demise to its growth, its development, and its attraction to visitors. So what we want to do today, as you are welcomed here to the Potter's House-Dayton International Ministries, and as the senior pastor and on behalf of the elders here, we welcome you here, and we want to have a conversation. We want to look at strategies. We want to look at solutions, because we want to make the Miami Valley one of the most attractive areas in the country for all generations, and we want to make sure that we have the type of leadership that can take us into this next millennium with momentum. And so we're very thankful and grateful for those that are here on the panel. And I want to give introduction here, and you'll also have opportunity to give an even grander introduction of yourself when we begin to talk about your work and your interaction with this particular group and others, and the trends and the concerns, the excitement that you may feel or have experienced with them as we continue to do our daily jobs. And so on my far right is none other than Miss Marcia Bonhart, and many of us are very familiar with her from television and being a news anchor right now. She operates as the Director of Development with Dayton Contemporary Dance, and she has been just a wonderful, wonderful hostess and speaker around this city for a number of years. She has just kind of set a trend for the female face on TV, and so we welcome you to this Millennial Symposium, and we look forward to hearing the comments from you. Sitting next to her is none other than the senior pastor of Living Word Church, the visionary, Dr. Pat Murray. Vandalia, Ohio is where that church is located, just on the cusp of doing everything that is fantastic in the community. Just a wonderful teacher, preacher, and he has tremendous experience and interaction with all generations and the races as well. And so a multicultural church, and we are looking forward to your strategies and your comments as well. Elder Minus is here on behalf of Apostle Arthur L. McGuire of Joshua Christian Ministries in Kettering, Ohio. And Joshua Christian Ministries is involved in tutoring programs, youth programs, working with individuals from around the country, around the nation, as it relates to young people and teens, and also has a multi-generational church. And so we're looking forward to your comments as well. Next to him is Miss Catherine Crosby, and she is on the outside of the millennial generation by a couple of years, but one of our youngest strong professionals in the community. She is the executive director of the Human Relations Council. That's a pretty big deal in Dayton, Ohio, and she has been very intricate and responsible for some of the newest strategies of Dayton, like the Community Initiative to Reduce Gun Violence, the Community Police Council, and so many other things as it relates to business development and just making sure that our community has not only the synergy but the connectivity that it needs to move forward. And then next to her, we have our millennials representation for sure. This is part one of the Wonder Twins, and we'll probably see part two in the second half. And but this is Mariah Manson. She is graduating from Northern Kentucky University summa cum laude, and she's very involved in her church, and so she represents a couple of areas for us as it relates to the millennial generation and how some of the comments and feelings and thoughts may not be holistically true for each and every millennial, and so we'll have her perspective as well. Next to her is a mentor of mine, and this is Dr. Robert C. Walker. He is the president of the Dayton Public School Board, and so we are honored to have him here to begin to talk about the educational prowess of the younger side of the millennial generation and what that needs to look like and what we're seeing as outcomes and things that have been some tags or some indicators of what is going to take place with our next generation. So we're very honored to have him as well. And then next to Dr. Walker is someone who is a person of ambiguity. If you've never seen him before, that's probably a good thing. That means you've never been to court. You've never had a sentence in the federal system, so that's good. But at the same time, if you've never seen him, you've missed a real pure heart. You've missed one of the greatest humanitarians that we have in this community. He is absolutely a wonderful individual, and I know that sounds almost weird coming from me, knowing that he sentenced me some years ago, and but I'm the better because of it. So none other than the Honorable Judge Walter H. Rice, and so we are very thankful for him. We do know that as this progresses early this morning, we will see Sheriff Phil Plummer jump in. We know the sheriff is always on the move, but he will be jumping on the panel. So when you see his face, that is exactly who that will be, is our beloved sheriff of Montgomery County. And then my co-facilitator is my spiritual father. He is a pastor of the Potter's House International Ministries in Jacksonville, Florida. He has been talked about by me probably in every occasion that I've had in a community meeting, the one who is the model of my modeling. And so we are glad to have him here. And what we want to do now, because of his facilitation today, we want to have a short video that will kind of give an explanation of some of the things that have been accomplished, some of the things that have been done, and a good introduction of Bishop McLaughlin, and he'll give the direction up top.
Yeah, the video that you are about to watch, Bishop McGuire felt that it would be good to at least see some of the things that we've done, some of the things we've tried to do, not necessarily with millennials, but in a community that affords millennials an opportunity to engage the kingdom of God, as well as economically, socially, educationally, and spiritually fulfill the call on their lives. My wife and I are both here, and we both as CEO and CAO of our ministry, and really it's a corporation with well over $13 million a year budget that we operate as a local church, and over $50-60 million worth of properties that we've been able to do without any federal, state, city, local grants, without even applying for one, and just a synergetic effort of people who wanted to make a change in the community and wanted to affect generations. So this particular video, though it may feature me to some extent, it features the ministry and the move and what has happened in the city of Jacksonville. So if you could watch it attentively and see some of the entities and some of the things that have taken place, I think it'll be a blessing. Roll it.
From a small group of faithful and committed people, the Potter's House International Ministries is now touching the nations. With a local church workforce of over 5,000 strong, the Potter's House continues to go boldly where no other church and ministry has gone before. Once hidden away in a remote area of the city of Jacksonville, the ministry flies under the radar no longer. The Potter's House International Ministries, under the visionary leadership of Bishop Bob McLaughlin, has ignored traditional barriers and is boldly modeling ministry in the 21st century. The church has become the perfect example of kingdom manifestation and has been used to repair the breach of its community and has restored the waste places and paths for people to dwell. The Potter's House International Ministries cannot be described in few words. The church is not only a beacon of hope and a model for ministry, but is truly a marketplace wonder. The ministry makes no distinction between ministry and the marketplace. The ministry has a mandate to meet the social, economical, educational, and spiritual needs of all that it comes in contact with. The ministry employs nearly 200 full-time staffers. Bishop McLaughlin believes the marketplace is where you should find God's people. The marketplace has been defined as all activity and life outside the four walls of the place of worship. With a vision from God given to him in the prayer tower of Oral Roberts University in the spring of 1988, Bishop Von McLaughlin has not deterred from the word spoken to him by God, and as a result, this divine initiative has generated worldwide attention and impact. The ministry is empowering God's people, modeling ministry to the world, transforming the communities in which we live, and communities that simply hear about what has been accomplished. These three words help describe what is happening in Jacksonville, Florida, because of a vision given to a man. The biblical inspiration for the ministry's mandate is found in Luke chapter 19, where the words are found, "Occupy till I come." The word occupy means to barter, to trade, to literally do the work of a banker. The body of Christ is called to be stewards over the manifold grace of God and his earth. Psalms 24:1 says, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof." As a result of this mandate, the church began to purchase and occupy property after property, starting with the former Volkswagen dealership, 27 acres, a sprung building, and one purchase that changed the ministry forever, the purchase of the former Bell South headquarters building that we now know as the Potter's House Multiplex. The multiplex lived up to its name by serving as a hub and incubator for small business, as the line was erased between worship and the marketplace, as both took place in one facility. When the multiplex was first opened, over 20 businesses were housed in it, including the Potter's House Federal Credit Union, an NCUA FDIC affiliated credit union designed to teach the people of God stewardship principles of saving, investing, and giving. The Potter's House was the state's first church-owned and operated financial institution. Today, the multiplex is still home to the Christian Academy's elementary and middle school, and several social service agencies and activities, including the Blacktop Ministry and the National Office for Mad Dads. The Academy is home to hundreds of students that have received national acclaim both academically and athletically, and other major universities throughout the U.S. after completing their high school requirements at the Academy. Our girls basketball team were USA Today national champs in 2011, and our boys football team were two-time NACA national champs from 2011 to 2012. This year's boys basketball team is already ranked in the top 10 nationally in most national polls. The largest and most impacting transformation has come in the purchase and renovation of Jacksonville's first fully enclosed mall. This facility sat vacant and dilapidated for over 16 years. It was home to drug deals and prostitution. But where there's a vision, there is change. The first phase was the transformation of the former anchor tenant of the mall, a Sam's Club wholesale building. That 120,000 square foot portion of the mall is now home to the Potter's House Ministry Center and administrative offices. The center includes a 4,000 seat auditorium for worship services, beautiful administrative offices, over 30,000 square foot of youth and children's facilities, reaching well over 1,000 kids a week with its various activities and outreaches. The center is also home to the Potter's House Recording Studio, numerous classroom and conference rooms, lecture hall, and so much more. Businesses also flourish in the Ministry Center with the Java Rock Coffee Shop and the Rock Cafe, which greets you as you enter the lobby center. On the same 48 acres of property is Kingdom Plaza. This became the most challenging assignment given to those who call the Potter's House home. This mall, which was once a bustling marketplace center and showcase for the city, was left barren and desolate. 18 years of neglect made the mall an eyesore and put it on the city's demolition list. But through the synergetic effort of the members of the Potter's House, this 384,000 square foot facility came back to life. And now this 177,000 square foot section of the mall is glistening once again. Many businesses have been housed and are housed in the new Kingdom Plaza Mall. Stores included men's and women's urban clothing, bridal shops, women's shoe stores, MacTech Pro, a dollar store, Metro Cellular Phone Service Center, Clear Talk Communications, Eaton Spa Salon, social services including Job Corps, ELS, as well as tax service offices, jewelry stores, and much, much more. The mall is now the jewel of the community. The mall is owned and operated by the church itself, and is also anchored by the church-owned businesses of Kingpin's Bowling Center, a 22-lane bowling alley, one of the city's most popular bowling centers, with bowling leagues and youth activities that make it a great place for the community to hang out. Temple Builders Fitness Center, a state-of-the-art 14,000 square foot fitness center with the latest and most high-tech fitness equipment in town. The only fitness center on the west side of Jacksonville, with an indoor pool and jacuzzi, also with the steam room, wet and dry. Temple Builders serves as a bridge for the community. It brings young and old together, and it crosses cultural boundaries, bringing people together to reshape the temples God has given them. Then there's the nationally acclaimed Soul Food Bistro, undoubtedly Jacksonville's most popular restaurant, with 2 locations. One on the beaches called Bistro South, and one in the mall itself on the west side of town. People travel from all around a 120-mile radius to enjoy the food and festivities and the atmosphere at the bistro. When the new mall had its grand opening, city, state, and national officials gathered from around the state and nation for the ribbon cutting and dedication of Kingdom Plaza. Local news media came for this historical event. Here's what one local station had to say.
Jewelry shops, a party store, just some of which you'll find inside the brand new Kingdom Plaza. You might know it better as Normandy Mall.
Our church moved into this community in 1991 when we bought the old Volkswagen dealership, then we bought the old AT&T phone center, and this was another building that was sitting in this dilapidated area of Jacksonville, and it was just pretty obvious that one day we were going to own it.
The property was purchased in 2003 at a price tag of $4 million. Now it's worth over $20 million.
Everything from bowling to eating to fitness to the whole shebang, and shopping and picking up things that they need for family and friends.
So I'm checking out some of the features here at the mall. We got jewelry, clothes. Oh my gosh, and bowling. Guys, watch this. It's been a while, but I think I can do it.
Seeing as how that didn't go too well, I tried out Temple Builders, the on-site fitness center. 0 for 2, but I didn't give up. After all, when you're at the mall, there's always time to eat.
Now that's something I am good at.
The mall isn't the only project for the Potter House. The next one includes a 2,000-plus student campus.
And the main thing church organizers tell me they want from the new mall is just for it to be open to anybody, no matter where you're from or what your background is, to be able to come here and have a positive experience. On the west side, Brian Kelly, Channel 4, the local station.
The entire property has been purchased for only $4 million and today is valued at over $40 million. The ministry has never applied for nor received federal, state, or city grants. No philanthropic help either. Through tithes and offerings, the ministry owns and operates 100-plus acres valued at over $60 million. Bishop McLaughlin has been applauded by many for his business acumen, his efforts to make the church and commerce flow together. Many of the nation's leading publications have recognized he and the ministry's accomplishment. Charisma magazine featured the ministry on its cover as the church that changed the city. Bishop McLaughlin was in the Wall Street Journal, where the church was applauded for its business genius, titling the article, Holy Cappuccino. Leadership Journal magazine featured the bishop as the Wizard of Odds. Ministries Today featured the bishop and his wife on its cover, calling them Architects of Change. And Dr. Ed Savoso featured the Potter's House story in Chapter 7 of his best-selling book, Anointed for Business. Church Executive Magazine, Onyx Magazine, and other publications have well documented the ministry's accomplishments. Bishop McLaughlin was nominated and received the Onyx Award for Entrepreneurial Leadership in the state of Florida. The Jim Moran Business Institute of Florida State University awarded Bishop McLaughlin with the Entrepreneurial Excellent Award. and was in 2014 appointed Business Ambassador for the state of Florida by Governor Rick Scott. All of the awards and publications speak to the well-documented and perpetual effect this ministry has had on Jacksonville's west side and around the world. Genesis 1:28 is our original biblical mandate to be fruitful and multiply, to increase and to take dominion. Isaiah 58 says we're called to repair the waste places and restore. The church has begun impacting 27 acres of land that will be used to house assisted living, 2,000 student academy campus, a new 7,000-seat football stadium, and much more. What has happened at the Potter's House has not been done in a corner. News media from around the nation have featured Bishop McLaughlin and the Potter's House on many occasions. Bishop McLaughlin has made several appearances on TBN's international program, Praise the Lord, giving advice and a word to those longing to transform their communities. God is not through yet. The best is yet to come. And we pray pastors and business leaders are inspired to occupy and manifest the kingdom of God in the earth so that you too can break the mold of tradition and transform your communities and cities in which you live.
All right. That's an internet. Enough of that. You could clap or something that would be really appropriate right there. You can clap too, right there. But thank you. I said that it appeared to feature some of my endeavors, but what it is synergy. It's the synergetic effort of a whole lot of people to make that kind of thing happen. I grew up without a father. I grew up in what we would call the hood. I grew up only 5 miles from that mall. I used to shop in there. I've got arrested in there and thrown out in there. Didn't go downtown. They just threw me out of the mall for shopping in Sam's without a wholesale card. And right where they grabbed me is where I put the pulpit. So every time I show up and go in there, I remember where I come from. That facility and what we've done has been able to enable, as you see, a lot of young people, a lot of millennials, through the Blacktop Ministry, Mad Dads, and all the things that we do, first responders on crime. We work with the judges and the sheriff and the people there in the city to help reduce crime in that area, to be accountable and to have accountability for a lot of young people. There are thousands of us. God has blessed us. We started with a handful of people. Years ago, my wife and I had nothing but each other and 2 little kids. And God has just added, without any denominational help, without any external counsel, we were just able to hear God from the inside and say, we're going to do something for the kingdom. We're going to do something in obedience to God. And I think the key to everything is simple obedience to God. So as we journey today and we talk about these millennials and we direct our attention, one of the things I think you should have gotten out of this, we should get, is that if the church is going to get involved, the church has got to have some type of manifestation, facilitation, a place for these kids and young people to get involved in the younger ages. And then the older, those who are in their early 30s and late 20s, the ministry should be attractive enough to where they feel like they want to be a part of something. They are by nature humanitarian, and we're going to see here in a minute. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to give about a 15-minute maybe or less presentation to give us some ground rules on millennials, to give us some fodder, some food for thought, some things that I think will bless us. I think we need here. Now, here you can probably see, the panel can see here. Hopefully it'll be large enough for you to see. But I want to just talk about the millennials because this is kind of a pic of what millennials would look like. Matter of fact, I see a couple of them up here on the stage right now, very, very dapper in their own way. I love the skinny leg jeans. Some of us pastors have gotten caught up in that at 60 years old. We're wearing these skinny leg jeans, and if we had the muscles, we would wear the tight muscle shirts as well and coming down. But there is a move afoot, though, to remove the label millennials. And I think we need to be careful about labeling because Pew Research, which is a fact-finding, nonpartisan research group that studies trends, has given us to know that only 40% of millennials even identify with the word itself. Now, we're talking about millennials, but the millennials themselves, only 40% even identify. This is a hashtag that's trending right now amongst millennials. Hate millennials. Hashtag hate millennials. And it is amongst millennials because, again, labels, because the title can become grounds for elimination. Meaning that if you label something, you can cancel it. In other words, you put a label on something and then they may not be appropriate for your gathering. So you segregate. So you don't want to label. Some don't like the term because of the media's general negative connotations. Let me show you what the media has done. And I'm all pro-millennial. I've got millennials, and I'll show you. And this meeting right here is a perfect example. Here's when I took a liking and an understanding that I have to leave legacy. Now, in order for me to talk about the future, I need the future at the table. I was in California at a Transform Our World conference, which is a conference that touches 76 nations, premiers, prime ministers, czars, you name it, people from around the world, from the Middle East to all over Europe. And we were sitting there at the table, and we were talking about the future of the world, literally the world, not just a community, the world. And while we were sitting at the table, it was 17 of us, and I was the youngest person at the table at 57 years old. So I said to the people there, I said, how in the ham fat are we talking about the future? How are we talking about the future economy? How are we talking about future leadership? And they're not here at the table with us. And so it was an eye-opener for those matured people who thought that they could save the world without those who will be running the world. And so that prompted me, even as we sit here today, we need the millennials actually here in order to really talk about what we need to talk about. That's how we get feedback, and that's how we learn, that's how we know. But other people like Pew Research and Barna has given us a lot of statistics. Millennials have been called and are presented as entitled, and I know you've heard that we owe them something because I'm entitled. And I've always shared, and I shared with our group, and I shared with our ministry and our businesses, that if I, which we have done, then nobody's really entitled to it, and that I cannot leave this with somebody who doesn't love it as much as I do, who doesn't have the best practices, who doesn't have the principles, the philosophy. So we have to mentor, and we have to train you, lest you feel entitled. Lazy. Generation Y, so lazy. You look at millennials, I pass Starbucks all the time. And we got several Starbucks in Jacksonville, and they're all sitting around on their computers chilling. In the middle of the day, I said, don't you guys work? And you know what they say to me? We are working. I go, okay, you look lazy to me. All right. Rebellious and undisciplined. Our gangs and thug life and those type of things. And young people are just narcissistic. I love myself some me. And this is how media is presenting them. This is how the masses are presenting them. This is not a blanket commentary on every millennial that there is, but this is what they have to fight against. Absorbed in their technology. Now, I'm going to sign off on this one. I'm going to say amen to this one. Amen. I get a chance to ride. I ride the city bus sometimes, Sunday mornings, Wednesday before I teach, literally just to stay connected with my community. I'll take a bus from our community downtown, 45-minute turnaround downtown, talking to people, sharing, and I can't get anybody to talk to me because their heads are down in these gadgets. All the young people, I'm like, hey, are you trying to ignore me? And they got earplugs in their ears, and they're sitting there together, like 8 of them, and they're all laughing individually about something different. But you're right there touching each other. And so absorbed in their technology, disrespectful, and you can say disrespectful right here. You can also say thin-skinned right here because they've sure been get offended so easily. And that proverbial eye rolling of authority against authority, that is right there. That is a picture worth 1,000 words. And there seems to be so much disrespect in America today. I think the judge and others of you that are baby boomers and over 40, over 50, will realize that the reason we're not thin-skinned is because our parents made sure that our skin wasn't thin by whooping us so much that we developed thick skin. And so because they disciplined us, our skin is not thin. It's kind of hard to offend some of us, but not these young people. Who are these millennials? The generation born between 1980 to 2000. So let's get a ballpark straight. They are the largest living of all generations. 83 million strong, 84 million plus now, 24% of the population, 24%. The most racially diverse generation, only 60% are Anglo, 5% migrant, and the rest other. The most single, 75% not married or have never been married. The most educated, more college degrees than any generation before them. Education has become so prevalent now and so easy to obtain through online courses. Community colleges now have gone to 4-year institutions. There are so many grant and scholarship programs, especially for even inner city kids now. If you can maintain a certain GPA, there's just a whole lot of opportunities educationally that didn't exist before. Before we had BEOG and NDSL. Some of y'all might remember that. I'll leave that alone. Half of the entire workforce in America are millennials. Think about it. Half. They said by 2020, 70% of the workforce in America will be millennials. 70%. And that is including entrepreneurs and independent workers. 29% declare to have no religious affiliation. None. They're nons. And they spend, this is good right here, $1.3 trillion annually. 1.3 trillion. With that said, 1.3 trillion makes them the largest consumer group in America. They just passed the baby boomers. 1.3 trillion. So people target them. The industry targets them. Fashion targets them. Movies, theaters, arts targets them. And they're the #1 consumers in America. Over the next 20 years, they will receive $1 trillion wealth transfer from us boomers. We're going to retire and going to pass it on to them, and they're going to have to manage our estates and properties and this and that. We better get to know them if they're going to handle that. This makes them the targets of extensive market research because they are the future. With that being said about them, from a secular perspective, here's what I want to get to from my perspective. A church without millennials is a church without a future. There's no way in the world that we're going to have a future as the body of Christ and as institutional churches in particular, but as local churches in any community without the millennials. The whole denominations are old and retiring, and they have, like that meeting I was in California, they have just tried to project for the future without the future there. You have to project. A good man, the Bible said, leaves an inheritance. We need to realize and understand that our children's children are now amongst us. They're here right now. To the millennials, they deal with their generation, and they have to be concerned about the next generation. But their children's children are not among them. But they are amongst us, and we got to realize that. In a few years, they will or will not be leading our churches. That's a scary commentary right there if you read between the lines. In a few years, they will or will not be leading our churches. If they are not leading our churches, we are in trouble. If we have not equipped them, embraced them, empowered them, endorsed them, we are in trouble. If they are not leading, there is no future for the church. There's no future for the church. Let's see. It's not a good thing because all churches should be people-friendly regardless of age. Now, to be honest with you, when Bishop said we're going to talk millennials, I had just taken millennials out of my vocabulary. I have what I call the Joshua generation. That's the young, the old, and everybody in between. I didn't want to label because I didn't want to counsel. I didn't want to have people feeling some kind of way because I talked about those millennials. And so I believe that we ought to be people-friendly regardless of age. That when anybody comes to the house of God, in particular for worship, that they ought to be embraced by everybody regardless of their age, their chronological stature and age. And there should be something there for them, which hopefully we'll talk about in a few. But our church is unfriendly toward millennials. When I asked this question one time in a workshop, a about half of the millennials said, yeah, they are. And the other half were like, no. And it depended upon what church they were from. It depended upon if they were denominational, ecclesiastical, or liturgical type of people, or whether they were charismatic, or whether they were traditional Baptist, Methodist, AME, Presbyterian, Holiness, Holy by First, Church of God in Christ, and written in heaven on a Sunday morning. It depended upon what church that they were affiliated with as to whether or not they were unfriendly. If you went to a church that they had those mothers sitting at the door watching what you have on, that girl, you know you don't need to be wearing that detached. If they went somewhere where they felt uncomfortable, and then they can go somewhere where they felt too much liberty, and they wanted order, because it's not true. Not every millennial is disrespectful and doesn't want order in their lives. They're very orderly, and we have to just shape that. Are millennials in the future plans? Are they even helping to plan for the future? That's where we are right now. How can we, through the people that are watching through my Facebook attached to this, and people that are watching, that are hitting, I mean literally watching, this boom, 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 signing on today, what message do we send to them about the future of millennials? Somebody's going to listen today and either going to embrace this concept of the future planning with millennials at the table, or they're going to come away feeling some kind of way, and hopefully we won't leave them thinking, who are these people? So I want us to be able to understand that they're necessary for the future and what we're going to do. So what are the actual ages of millennials, and who are they? They are normally, watch this, from the ages of 16 to 35 years of age, 16 to 42, really. The age group, you got to listen, share beliefs, attitudes, values, and behaviors because of the time period that they grew up in. So that's what you need to know. Also called Gen Y, Echo Boomers, Digital Natives, Lord Jesus, Millennial Devices. Lord have mercy. So when I hear these old folk talking about, I don't mess, still got a flip phone. That's not a good thing. You don't need to boast about having a flip phone. I can't even send you video. We can't even FaceTime. What's wrong with you? All right. Gen Y, the millennials born between 1980 to 2020. Now listen to these because it's kind of small on the front screen, so I'm going to read them to you back here. The millennials grew up and began their careers in a time when, now listen to these, almost every home except third world countries had an internet connection and a computer. All right. They lived through 2008, which is the largest economic decline since the Great Depression. Now you got to remember that's important, that they were able to live through that and not be impacted by that. And so they see a financial crisis as just an opportunity. So they lived through that fall. 9/11 terrorist attacks in the World Trade Center, the Pentagon. They didn't just see this on the movies, on the games where they blow up cities and communities. They actually saw planes actually attacking America. They saw terrorist groups using airplanes as missiles on two of the tallest structures and the most notable structures in America. They watched that via television. They grew up with the white Michael Jackson. I grew up with Michael was a little black boy from Gary, Indiana. Yeah, the millennials knew him as the white Mike. But anyway, they grew up with Brandy and Usher and Mystical, Tupac, the Notorious B.I.G., the Fresh Prince, Keisha Cole, Destiny's Child, Rihanna, T.I., Erykah Badu, Miss Jackson, if you please, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Mary J. Blige, 50 Cent, Outkast, Kanye, Snoop, Miley, the Kardashians, Bieber, Justin, Gaga. They grew up with these folk, man. We grew up with Elvis. Ain't nothing but a hound dog running all the time. Woo. We grew up when you couldn't move your leg too far to the left or the right. You ever see Gaga come out on stage? How about Miley now? Lord have mercy. And that's normal. Let me keep moving. Notice I didn't mention Beyonce. My wife is here. All right. They grew up with Google, MySpace, Facebook, LinkedIn, eBay, PayPal, Instagram, Snapchat, and porn. There's some things that we didn't see pornographically until we did it. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to leave that alone. But these kids now are able to click and switch by themselves in their rooms on their smartphones and through television and everything and see stuff that shapes their morality or lack thereof. Flex time, work from home, freelancing.
Whatever happened to the warehouses? Whatever happened to going to work? What happened to the lunch pail? Whatever happened to getting up, fixing your bologna sandwiches with an apple and a cookie, and going to work, drinking water out the water fountain? That's what I'm talking about. Optional fundamental beliefs and values, relativism and hyperpluralism. I'm almost done. Weapons of mass destruction, which we knew nothing about. Street killings and weapons of rapid destruction. All types of guns and violence. A dysfunctional government. And the first black POTUS. Oh, yeah, and then there's Donald Trump. Hyperpluralism. I couldn't even get an amen from nobody. Didn't say nothing about nothing. I couldn't even get a ooh, yeah. Hyperpluralism. Hyperpluralism is simply this. It allows them to hold faith and doubt in the same hand together and have no problem. These are the people you're dealing with, right? Many only relate to God transcendently. He's up there over there somewhere, as if he's wound the clock up and just lets it run, but he doesn't worry about what time it is. God is not a part of their day-to-day activities, and every belief system is up for debate for them. They believe God is real. As a matter of fact, you got to remember, over 60% believe that God is real and important. So don't ever think this is a godless generation. 29% believe that God is actually in their business every day. So let's work on them instead of worrying about the other percentage that don't. It's either or. It's not either or, but it's both and to them. Now, both and is going to be very important. They are inclusive. Here's what one blogger had to say. Now listen to this, and then we're wrapping up. We don't really care about the color of your skin, what country you come from, what gender you belong to, what gender you are attracted to, or even what God or gods you pray to, if any at all. While the rest of our nation remains divided over these things, millennials aren't so divided. And when we take over, this will help us to resolve these issues far more easily than it is now. This is a millennial blogger who writes and says, basically, you guys need to not sweat the small things, gender, nationality, relationship with God. When we take over, Lord have mercy, and they will take over. The millennials are coming. The millennials are coming. Can millennials be a mindset? I'm looking at Judge here. He's almost 80 years old, but I promise you, he can have a millennial mindset and be able to relate, because I've had this asked of me, just how millennial are you? And I've heard to ask that question to you guys, you older heads, and folk out there, just how millennial are you? I mean, you know, you can sit there stuck in a rut and stay in the 90s, the 80s if you want to, but you need to move on up. Regardless of your generation, you can have a millennial mindset and fit in. So I say we move the age from 16 to 80 if the over 40 has a millennial mindset and they are millennial friendly. So I want to get rid of this millennials are 16 to 42 and say that we can have a millennial mindset and fit in. How do I know this? Every Thursday night, I meet with a room full of over 60 millennials. I teach theology. We deal with current events. We have another 250 watching online around the country, from Houston, Australia, different parts of the world, Africa. And they're watching, and they're engaging, and I engage them. We have fun. We don't argue, debate, cuss, or fuss. I am millennial. I am a millennial mind. I have a millennial mindset. I think millennial. I'm attached to my gadgets. I'm a gadget man. More like Inspector Gadget, but I'm still in the gadget man. And I do what I do, and I have fun, and I wear my ripped jeans, and I wear my t-shirt, and I don't have to even look like them to be like them. I can come in a suit, and they go like, wow, that's slick right there. I'd like to wear that. So we got to be careful. So we don't have to look like them to act like them. So, Judge, don't worry about wearing the ripped jeans and the sneakers. You're going to be all right. All right? We can only win this war together. Live like a boomer and think like a millennial if you have to. Go ahead and live like a boomer, but please think like a millennial. I believe that you can't mass brand millennials. I believe that we have some who don't mind hooking up with the past generation and work with them as long as they're not being treated like children. They want to be mentored, not parented. Some just want to be trusted to fulfill tasks given to them without micromanagement, being treated like a child, thought less of because of age, and not trusted for lack of experience, perceived lack of wisdom, and because of their dress and many tattoos. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so that's basically my little rundown there. That's my little run of what millennials do and what they think and how they act. And put that together last night to get here today so I could be here with you guys and we can have some healthy conversation. Now, I made some comments and said some things about what millennials are, what they're not. I gave the social media perspective and I gave the media perspective. I did not say this is what I believe. I did not say this is how I see it. I gave the Barna and the Pew Research report statistics. Those statistics are real. They're authentic. They can stand the test of any of your scrutiny. I deal with hundreds of millennials every week, hundreds, literally thousands, through our ministry and whatnot. So I'm not foreign. I have a millennial mindset. So I think it'd be good if I can give some leadership, hear you, pull from you, because some of you have some strong commentary that's going to bless the nations today. Oh, we're going to save the world. As it relates to millennials, I feel it coming right over in this area, right in here. I feel something right in here. We're going to have us a real good time today. So who would like to begin with commentary concerning this commentary and our future?
I have a question.
Sure.
All this social science regarding that generation, not to say that generation, but the millennial generation. As a baby boomer, no one studied us as deeply, as critically. And so what is the difference? Why? What makes them so critically important to society? This is a devil's advocate question.
No, this is just great because of the technology in which we abide by today and the rules that we play by today. In our day, a friend was a real friend. You had to have some type of physical contact. You had to know a little bit about their history. You had to know a little bit of like. And if you liked somebody, it's because you spent time with them and you knew their nuances and you knew their proclivities and you still choose to like them. Today, you can have a friend you've never seen before. You can sleep with somebody at night that you've never seen before in your life physically. And you can like people and have never, ever met them before and don't really know if that's really them or not. We live in a different world at a different time. And again, with the advent of the internet, and this is the first generation that has lived with the internet and has known smartphones and these devices all their lives. So the game has changed. And I think back in the day, you had to engage your neighbor, you had to go here, you had to physically do some things. It was safer. But now, the porn industry right now is one of the largest motivators and supporters of the internet. I mean, the things that these kids go through now, the things that are happening now, and the pluralism, the integration of people, where I grew up in an all-black community, went to an all-black school and didn't know any white folk, other than my personal family, because my daddy married a white woman, he left us, so I had little white brothers and sisters, but other than that. But the deal is that now we're citizens of the world. And I think we have to study this trend. And now this is the largest group since the baby boomers, since after the war. That's what they're called, the echo boomers. And so now this is the most rapidly growing generation that we've experienced since the baby boomers. And so there's some, and our studies are different now. We're able to literally do things that we couldn't do back then. We have access to data that we didn't have back then. We can redo all this stuff. So all this stuff, and then look at them. They sit in front of us smart as a whip.
Do you guys feel special?
No, I mean, I'm pointing here. Okay.
Do you feel special? Do you feel the millennials are special? What do you think? And yeah, Katie, yes, you are. You're right on the cusp. Special as in all these
that's why I'm coming. Pick up that mic down.
All this social science directed toward your age group, your age grouping. Do you feel that, because a lot of people feel that you are entitled. So do you feel special with everybody studying you, everybody wanting to know you, everybody wanting to be like you, everybody trying to figure you out?
Hold before we go there. We're going that way, and I'm trying to give some leadership so that we can basically follow a flow and a pattern here
when we get to you in that area. That's one particular area. But there's a gamut of things that I just shared, and there's a vast amount of information that we need to get out from millennials to millennials. And I was definitely holding on to you and wanted to make sure that I gave you the right platform to begin to share what's in your heart about millennials. We want to do that. That's an important question. Do you feel? Do you think? What it is and that. But how do you feel overall about millennials and about even being on this panel today? Even as she's just asked you that question, how do you feel being up here today? Did you come today like, I'm going to tell them something? Did you come today like, this is great. Hopefully I can get my platform out, or hopefully I can share some things that can help these old people. How do you feel?
Well, the first thing I felt is, first off, it's a privilege to be here amongst great people who are doing things in this community. And I feel like, I'm young, so I haven't really had a chance to make the impact. But I wanted to make sure that I was coming from a perspective of not just me, because I do believe we're all different. And again, we can't label the entire millennial generation. I know that my perspective is just one of many. But what I can say is that I came here just wanting to shed light about the different perspectives. And so I spent time, before I came, talking to what I consider 3 different types of people. You have people who are committed to church, or believers, study the Word of God, and just asking them questions about how they felt. And I asked people who were kind of in between, who didn't really attend church, wasn't really involved in the community, and kind of asked their perspective. Then I asked people who just hated the community, hated the church, and I wanted to make sure I was prepared to speak for all of us. And I think, like you said before, it's important because we can't plan for the future without the future, and also in the sense that, the baby boomers are retiring, so the millennials are going to take over, and so it's important. Maybe not all do want some mentoring, do want some training, but it has to be a process where we can receive it, because we have to build a culture of trust, a culture that before I can care what you say, I have to know how much you care. And so I think it's something that has to be built, a process. It's something that has to be systematic, because it doesn't just happen by just somebody saying, here's what you need to do. But we have to have a relationship and a community of trust to begin to build that leadership that's necessary.
So how do you feel when you find somebody like me? I just had a birthday last week, turned 60 years old, and you hear me saying, hey, we need the millennials at sure that we connect. Hey, we need to make sure that we understand what's going on. Hey, we need to erase these labels, and hey, we need to get everybody on one accord. This is a team effort. We got to work together. Does that encourage you at all to know that there's some pastors that are like saying, hey, we ain't just having church, we're concerned about the future?
I think, again, from certain millennial perspectives, especially those who are committed and have a desire to be involved with the church, even speaking to the one I told you before, her perspective was, yes, I want to be involved. The church that I would like to go to is a church that allows me to grow and have leadership roles. Now, speaking with the other millennials that's in between, they don't want responsibility. They don't want someone to add more to their plate, because they're busy, so busy and ambitious to the point where it doesn't, they don't know how to balance seeking Christ and trying to be successful.
Exactly.
And then the other millennials, they're not ready to sit at the table because they don't have a trust for the church.
Okay.
And so I think it's something that certain millennials can receive, but not all.
So not to just bring attention to ourselves and whatnot, but when you can see a mall functioning, businesses happening, people being successful and transforming and being humanitarian and helping the homeless and all that kind of stuff, the priority is that you can come into the ministry and be a part of something bigger than you, to where you're not responsible for it, you're a part of it. So I would say the church has got to be big enough to be able to handle these gifted young people as they come in, and not slow them down, but to cause them to reprioritize what's important. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you. And then when there's a model of this manifestation where you can see that you can seek God first and be successful, that you really should seek God first and be successful. And I think they need to see that. And I think that that's going to help us tremendously. And you kept saying, I'm not a millennial. You ought to be proud. You ought to be glad that everybody thinks you are. Because you ought to be just glad that everybody thinks you are. So what's your comment there?
So it depends on who's doing the
Use the mic.
measuring. It depends on who's doing the measuring. So I'll be 40 this year, but I'm raising a millennial. I have a 17-year-old.
You're a millennial.
So I want to kind of give a different perspective. So you described 3 different types of millennials. So I'm probably the one that, in Bishop McGuire, I'm getting ready to go there. I'm the one, I'm not going to church. I'm not interested in going to church. I don't have a connection with the church. Do I believe in a higher power? Absolutely. And I think part of, when I think about the church, I think about it as an institution. It's not, and for me, I'm not interested in walking into an institution. Now, all of the things that the church is supposed to be about, what it's supposed to be in our community, the reason why I don't necessarily feel like I need to walk into an institution is because I do that work every single day. I'm in an office where probably, and I have one of my team members here today who is truly a millennial, but probably 1/3 of my office is full of millennials, one of which, who's going to be on the panel today, is a pastor. And so, I touch base with him all the time because he is in the church and he's leading a church. And we talk about religion, we talk about spirituality, and I use him, I guess, as a means to kind of process my thinking. I've also had this conversation with McGuire. But I think for me, the older that I get, the more comfortable I become with, I don't need this institution, but what I need is all of the things that the institution is about. So it's about caring about people. It's about being true. It's about being sincere. It's about modeling certain behaviors because you want to give, you want to receive what is given. And so as a parent, when my daughter was younger, I remember raising her, and I sent her to Catholic school because I knew that I was not going to go to the church. I knew that I was not interested in taking her to church, but I felt like she needed to understand some sense of godliness. But really what it was is I wanted her to be a good person. And so for me, I think it's more about the modeling. I think what happens with stepping outside of the church framework, I think what happens with millennials, and we've seen it in our community, we have not done a very good job of creating this pipeline of leaders. And so what you find is happening, so for my demographic, when I was coming up, we had energy. We wanted to be a part of the leadership pool. We wanted to be that next generation to create positive things in our community. But then you had this group of, I'm going to say baby boomers, but you had this group of individuals that were in leadership positions who weren't ready to transition. And so there was no succession plan made for us to be able to take leadership positions. So if you did not have that natural ability, or if you didn't seek out guidance in that way, you missed that opportunity. So now you have this younger generation that's probably, I'm going to be 40, so I'm going to say 30, between 25 and 35, that are like, well, you know what? If you're not going to give me that opportunity, I'm going to take that opportunity because there are so many things that are wrong that's wrong in our communities that I want to affect change. And so I'm just going to do what I need to do because you're not hearing me. And so I think that is what's happening, and I think that's why millennials are being studied in such a major way, is because they're making these huge impacts, because they're defying all traditional means of leadership, the whole hierarchical piece of you have to earn your place. Even if you talk about the political machine that exists, it's about, well, you have to earn your place to be in position, to be selected, to seek this office. Millennials are like, I don't have to do all of that. I can affect change without even being in that office, and you're going to hear me.
She represents so much of the millennial populace, right? When I talked about meeting with those people, they don't have to be Christians to meet with me to talk about who God is, right? And to talk about the church as not being an institution, but the church being a body, a functioning body, right? that they can find who they are. I was 26 years old. I had never been inside the doorways of a church, right? And I would have been classified a millennial at that time. I never read a Bible. I had never prayed. I had no need for the church, no use of the church, no nothing. So I was home with a glass of Jack Daniels in one hand and weed in the other, and Prince singing the night, I'm going to party like it's 1999. I had a great job, a bunch of money. I was doing well, professional. I was doing my thing, right? But I didn't know there was a God. Once I discovered that there was a God, I didn't join an institutional church. I became the church, right? And so I began to do those things that I believe we ought to do, being good people. My morals changed, my mindset changed, and I blamed it on the teachings of the Bible, the Word of God. So I don't try to beat people over the head and young millennials over the head and people like yourself who don't find that connection with the church and say, you're going to hell, you're this, and that. No, you need to continue your pursuit of righteousness. You need to continue your pursuit of truth. What we need is mentors in our communities that represent the kingdom properly, that represent the church properly. We need churches that eliminate this institutionalized feeling that people have, because people are tired of the bells and the smells, you know, just the ding, 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 and the incense and the stuff and the, you know, this and that. It depends on where you are, who's influenced you, and where you go. Because I'll be honest with you, we can raise up churches here in Dayton that have the same concept and mindset or similar to what we're doing in Jacksonville and what's happening around the world. I can only use Jacksonville because I know it, that we're tearing those walls down and people are coming in, not affiliated with the church, but they're being empowered, they're being strengthened, and then eventually they find the peace that they need in the message that we have, which is a Christ-centered message. So it is real. And so, I believe that God is real. I believe that he's immanent, not just transcendent. He is immanent. And I can prove it in my own life. Because going from a cokehead and an alcoholic, I've never been incarcerated. I've never had some devilish stuff, OD'd a couple of times, this and that. But I blame the success that I've had in empowering people, educating people, economically, spiritually, socially. I blame that on a relationship with God and not the church. And so it's not the institutional church, but it is the body of Christ. And that when you become a believer in God, you become a part of a body that doesn't have walls. But you can't be a solo act. And I think your question now makes a lot of sense, going back to some of the nuances, some of the things that millennials do and how they act. We study that, but that's a product of the age in which they were born, the time in which they live. We get our information through social media, YouTube, Facebook now. People sit and listen to black consciousness and all these different things from people who may be spewing facts, but it's not truth. And so truth is truth. There's a word, the word of the year in 2005 was a word called truthiness. Truthiness means what's truth to me is truth to me, what's truth to you is truth to you. Subjective relativism. And everybody did that which is right in their own eyes. So that might be what you think, but that ain't what I think. That might be what you believe. So then we start deteriorating and start rejecting authority, and we start rejecting objective truth, and we start believing that there's no absolutes. And so you wind up with a independent, wayward, I'm going to get mine generation. And I want to try to avoid that when it comes to these millennial judges.
There's so much to talk about as a result of all of these thoughtful comments, but I reject the stereotypes of millennials being lazy, undisciplined, and so many other stereotypes. Right. They don't fit the millennials I know and work with. I think the reason established institutions are no longer as attractive to millennials is because, quite frankly, millennials see us as stuck in our ways, not interested in hearing what they have to say, and as a result, millennials conclude that whether it's the church, the political parties, social service agencies, simply are not where it's at. And that's our fault. We talk about mentoring millennials. Yes, we have something to teach millennials, but my golly, they have far more to teach us. If we want to refresh our institutions, whether it's a church, a political party, a social service agency, we need to bring in those millennials who are interested in social change, and that is an astoundingly high percentage of them. We need to bring them into our organizations, and if they don't want to join, just come and talk to us so we can develop a millennial set of mind, because you're absolutely correct. If we don't, no matter how hard us dinosaurs try, we cannot make the social change that this or any other community needs.
That coming from a 79-year-old judge, to me, is absolutely phenomenal. I think that there'll be many millennials who would stop and say amen, and there'll be few pastors who would say amen to that, because they're stuck in a rut. They don't want to change. Tradition is the killer of all progress. Jesus said, by keeping your traditions, you make what God wants to do, the word of God, of none effect. But that is true, Judge. That's the commentary that I'm trying to share. That's why we've opened up our doors. That's why there's this platform today. But you got some millennials that will hear that from you and still say, yeah, but, and just move right along. But that should have been applauded. That is something that proves to us that there are some old dinosaurs who are ready for change, who need them, as I begin this, at the table, who can't talk about the future without them, that have to have that input or we go nowhere. And this transition succession plan, I've become very deliberate and very intentional in succession, and adding to our eldership, millennials, adding to our staff, millennials, adding to everything that we do, get them involved here, decision making here, because that's the target group. If the world is targeting them economically and socially, why aren't we targeting, and educationally, why aren't we doing so? And so we need to reflect what's going on in our society, within our churches. But it's not just about church. This is about business. It's about the institutions, social services, all kinds of stuff. But the church, my dear, in particular, was never intended to be an institution. Never intended to be institutionalized. It was the body. So when I wrote that video, did you watch the video clearly? You see some of the things that we're doing. That's not traditional church. That's not something you just do in church. I'm not a part of a denomination. I don't have somebody tell me what to do. I don't have to put on a clergy collar backwards and go to some function where everybody got on white and black and walking down the aisle in formation, and 100 women in black, 100 men. I don't have to go to pretty hat teas and baby contests and midnight musicals and do all those things that don't empower, that don't help people. And so we realized that we got some issues, and we realized we need to get those issues solved. We're going to involve some other folk coming.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. I think, what you're doing in Jacksonville is great. It's not happening here yet, and I think that is, part of the conversation we need to have is how do we move to that? How do we get the resources to move to that locally, or what are some things that we can do here to simulate what's happening in Jacksonville so that we can have that same.
And again, I'm not dumping Jacksonville. We're a model, not the model, right? I was talking to Pastor Pat earlier about Dream Center and about doing some stuff that engages the community, black, white, other, poor, rich, everything in between, that meets the total needs of the total man, basically social services, right? And those things need to be made available, and we can pool our resources and do that. It takes unity amongst leadership, but we can do that. And Bishop McGuire decided to roll the video as just an introduction of who I am, and just basically what we have done. And I do this around the country. I do this around the world, literally. I'll be in Africa, in Zimbabwe next month, doing the same thing, talking to a church of 30,000 people about their millennials and how in Africa, in a third world country like Zimbabwe in the continent of Africa, that I'll be there talking to them about how we're going to make it, how we're going to do it. 92% unemployment. The poorest city in the poorest country in the world. 30% HIV. 29% tuberculosis. And you go in there and try to give them hope that there's a future for them. So the world is bigger than us, and there's some people there who don't even know that there's a millennial issue. They are plugged into the system there, and they're just trying to survive. And I think we need to learn that too. But Pat, you want to jump in right here, or anybody else concerning some of the comments? Your comments are very strong, very good, but you represent also a segment of the millennials. A segment. There's another segment. I just did a panel recently with some professional millennials, and you would think that there was no problem, in the world that everything is hunky-dory? And I was like, my God, where do y'all come from? You know, because of their experiences in their communities that are vibrant, that are doing well and meeting these needs, conversations that they've had before now, like before we came in here today. Like I would love to have you come down and be a part of some of our think tanks, fly you down, and let you give that input because you're reflective of what we have to make the adjustments in order to win this generation. Yeah.
Well, very much to your point, by the way, Dream Center is coming to the community, and so we're working on it right now. But after 27 years of pastoring, very much the same model that Bishop McLaughlin has, we don't have a denominational connection, and we've always made it about not the institutional idea, but the presence-driven idea. And Jesus addressed every social issue throughout Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the ability to engage. It has to be a personal encounter. Proverbs says, without a vision, the people perish. It didn't say without a sermon, the people perish. It's without a model, without being able to see what it looks like to wear faith every single day. Or sometimes the objection of millennials is you preach a love message, but you never show up where love is needed. And so the ability to care in a dynamic way, and not just a theological or philosophical way, but to engage at some point has to happen, and it has to happen on a regular basis. So so those are the things that we're working on. That theology is actually the most practical thing in the world, as long as you're a doer of the word, like James says, and not just a hearer.
Right. And again, I think what's really going to help that millennial portion is you've got to respect our convictions and morals and what we do as a body. And then secondly, get this concept. I think all of us have got to learn how to embrace what we don't endorse. Right? You will not be able to affect change in anything that you won't first embrace. Jesus embraced people, then healed them. He fed them, then healed them. So you got to be able to cross that line, have open communication. See, if you were to tell me at home that I'm not this church girl, I ain't interested in it, I'm not going there, that doesn't faze me at all. That's like, you're going to be my dog, excuse my expression, but you're going to be my partner. I'm going to make you the focus of why I exist. So I've got to be able to say, well, if that's your commentary, that's what you think, then how can I prove to you that that's not necessarily the way it is intended to be? So how can I practically model and show you that this thing is real? I'm not going to beat you over the head and quote scriptures at you. I can do it without scriptures. Sir Francis of Assisi, one of the great fathers and priests of the church, took up acolytes into a city, and he said, we're going to evangelize this city. We're going to transform it. Then he sent them, and he says, I want you to go and change this city and use words if you have to, only if necessary. In other words, it's not going to be what we say, as Pat was saying, it's going to be what we do. And so we love people, we feed the hungry, we clothe the naked, visit the jails, the prisons, the nursing homes, the hospitals, take care of the widows and the orphans, dive through the 1040 window, be concerned about something outside of your own little household, and show yourself friendly to people, and that's how you get friends. The lesbians, the homosexuals, the people in our community that people write off and say the church doesn't love, I embrace without endorsing, because my purpose is transformation and learning. Because the more I know, the more effective I can be in every aspect of my life and ministry towards the masses. I want to win them. You got to have compassion and passion. And so I think that's what caused what you see in Jacksonville, compassion and passion. That's not for us. We don't make money off of that. We don't get paid from that. We're the visionaries behind that. What it does is creates jobs. As I said last night, my wife is employed she's human resource department, over 1,000 people, literally, since we've been a church there. And so, you know, we're helping households and building community and feeding the hungry and doing those type of things, and clothing, housing, all those kind of things. And we do it through synergy. And I think what you were saying, what Pat was saying, the Dream Center, some other things, social service that can happen. Judge, are you still serving? Are you still on the bench?
Yes, I am.
Are you still on the bench? If he passed some laws, we get some things done for social services and this and that, we can see it happen. Think about Dayton. Without a vision, the people perish. Everything starts from nothing, then it Then it becomes, we started with nothing. And then we just begin to speak it like this. We begin to talk it, and boom, there it is. It came to pass. And so we can do the same thing here in Dayton. Dayton's got a little reputation. I get a little nervous when I come to Dayton. I have my bulletproof vest on right now. I'm in Dayton. But the deal is that Dayton can become an oasis. Dayton, there can be pockets of this kingdom that can move all over this city. You were going to say.
Bishop, you said that the church is a body, and the body is based on relationships. And that's what we're looking to do. But one of the things that millenniums are affected by is the internet, because now on the internet, you can have relations. And one of the things I was told was that what the internet does is it brings people who are far away very close, and those who are close push them away. In a sense where you could have 8 people talking, sitting around a table, I'll say, but yet they're having interaction and relationships with people throughout the world. And what happens is it's easier to have a relation on the internet because it doesn't get messy.
Right.
It doesn't force you to work. If things get uncomfortable, you can just unfriend them, and you can have a totally new set of friends.
In an hour.
Yeah, relationships.
And so we have to learn how to embrace that culture and impact it, right? So I do this with our church. My wife is a little tougher on Facebook and on those type of interactions. I shared a message one time that changed the life of hundreds of thousands of young people. You can Google it. It's called "You Can't Walk with God and Run with the Devil," right? And it was when MySpace was the bomb. It was when people were hiding behind. They didn't know how to handle these new social media sites. And so I found my son, a lot of members of our church. They were gangsters on MySpace, but they were just children. I found some of our girls from our Christian academy that were putting some illicit pictures online and stuff, and somebody hooked me up to it, gave me their names. I'm the chancellor of the school, I was athletic, so I found it, and I went through it, and I was appalled. I could not believe what they were doing, right? So I brought the websites to church on a Sunday morning. I just kind of pulled them up online. You know who this is? Do you know who this is? Do you know who this is? And I began to, because I cared about them. When I tell you that Sunday morning, my wife is my witness sitting right here, I got Dead Man t-shirts, 6 sets of gold Tifas. I've got dime bags of weed. I let them go to the car, and we had over 6,000 eventually turned in, maybe 3,000 to 4,000, to be accurate without hyperbolizing, CDs and DVDs with illicit material, where we were giving them opportunities to go to their cars and get it. We had kids coming and weeping, hundreds of people on the altar, and people just repenting over that moment where we exposed their lifestyles on the internet and on MySpace, where they were exposed, trying to be something that they were not. And they had friends that were out to get them. Some of them we have a lady in our church left her family, left her husband, left everybody to meet up with somebody they met on Facebook, and found out that that person was the biggest crook in the world. So we have to deal with that. We have to deal with how they deal with that. We have to police it. We have to have policies in place in our churches that help people get delivered from it. We can't have people codependent on people that they never met before, engaging people, because then they listen to them. How about blogs and forums that aren't truthful, that aren't accurate? How about people spewing out bad information and facts that aren't factual at all? And people making up their minds that they're going to follow that they're going to go and join that cult, or they're going to go and join up with those people. How about those type of things that are out there that we have no control over because of the internet? So we got to deal with all of that. Yes, ma'am.
So I want to talk a little bit about, because I'm looking at some of the questions that Bishop McGuire sent out, and I want to talk a little bit about, one, where I think faith-based institutions are a tool in addressing some of the issues I think that we wanted to talk about today, but then also talk about more specifically, and I think everybody has something that they want to talk about what they're doing, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Human Relations Council is doing, and I'm going to put Jared on the spot because, you know, Jared, he works in our office and he is a millennial, but I think he's been doing some really creative things in the community to try to address like some of the crime and situations around violence and how do we give this generation an opportunity to speak, be heard, be considered, and then take that information and use it as a strategy to reduce violence, to reduce some of the challenges that we're having in our community. You talked about, you know, coming into the community and wearing a bulletproof vest. I live in West-Dayton. Yes, we have a significant uptick of gun violence in West-Dayton, but I'm not afraid. I'm not going to be afraid to come into my community. What I am going to do is try to provide opportunities for people to change their community. And I think one of the things that we have to think about holistically, so you have what you're doing around the Dream Center, you have Omega CDC that's doing some work around the Hope Center, you have Bishop McGuire who's doing some things around Young Life, you have GDPM that's doing some things with HUD Choice to try to change the community because some of the challenges that we're facing has to do with a lack of hope, a lack of connectivity, a lack of inability to access resources and the community assets that are meaningful for our community to be able to thrive. And so, you know, switching from you know, while I understand we're in the church and the church is one aspect or one tool to help solve some of these problems, we are talking about how do we create young leaders and how do we use this as a means to give them an opportunity to affect change. And I think that's where this conversation
that's where we're going. And here's what we said we were going to do. We said that we were going to discuss the slide presentation and some of the statistics and some of the general Scotland. And then we said after lunch we were going to attack and deal with resolution and allow each person to give their position on what they're doing, what they see, how they perceive, and then go through those questions. So we were going to do that after lunch and go through those questions. We just wanted to set a platform. We wanted to, without getting specific, we're going to give you a little time at the break to even get your thoughts together so that you can be as specific as she's been and as articulate as she is about the real issues. But we want to have that resolved. That's usually the end of the matter where we resolve some things, where we say, okay, we've met, we've talked, now what are we going to do? So I should have said that up front, that's kind of where we're going, because I do want to specifically address those questions that came in from other people outside, and make sure that we leave with some order and some consistency. I give leadership to these type of things, and I understand that they can go this way, they can go that way. I don't think so far that there's been any negative, any vibe or anything that's not saying we're working towards resolve. We're working towards communication. We're working towards understanding each other. We're working towards developing a succession plan. We're working towards us realizing that we have to do something in our communities, that these organizations, the Dream Center, Young Life, all need to work together, that we can combine our efforts and become stronger together than we can apart. That's what synergy is all about. We're working towards that. We got college students that are coming out that's going to need a platform to be able to take their giftings and their education and share it with their communities, if it's through the church, through social services, some other institution, but in their communities to make a difference in life. The church is a vehicle. There are other vehicles. And as somebody said, I'll work with anybody to do right, but nobody to do wrong. So I partner with government. I partner with the wisdom of a judicial system and what it is put in place to do. It is not a detriment to us. It is for our benefit. And we're to submit ourselves to it and pray for it and work with it. We can't be anarchical and rebel against the established authorities that be. And so, Judge, I get back to you and just say, and I see you have the mic in your hand, that your commentary was like super. I didn't expect that to come out of a dinosaur. I mean, I didn't expect that to come out of you like it did. That is so refreshing to know that. That is so refreshing. You have your own kids, and they're millennials, you know, and it's refreshing because you know what your kids do. You know their attitudes. You know how they've grown up. You know how you raised them. Same with mine. I have two. I have a 33-year-old and a 31-year-old. And I know how they think. My daughter is 33 years old. She's the innovation and strategies officer in our church. And she works on innovative ways to reach our community and to become palatable to young people and to help us to become amicable to folk and to say that, hey, we're not here for us, we're here for you. And so I turned her loose on that. And she comes up with some crazy stuff, But in the same breath, I'm going like, that's my girl. And that's what's needed out here because she knows. I saw you had the mic up.
I was just going to say, I think the key word is experiences. You and I may be on the same side of 1,000 issues, but you and I have had different life's experiences. And for us to really work together to address some of these issues, I need to know not where you're coming from, but why you're coming from there. And the why comes from your life's experiences. If I know why you're coming from a position, if you know why I'm coming from a position, there's virtually nothing that we can't solve. And I think we have to realize that the younger generations grew up differently than we did, or that most of us did. We had families. We had functioning families. We had families that frankly weren't too exhausted from both parents working that they could nurture us. And I think we have to understand that the generations that we look at and in effect say, why don't they have our values? The answer is because they've had different life's experiences. And we are not going to be able to successfully lecture them on our values. We need to know their life's experiences so that we can better serve not only them, but the entire community.
That's well said, and hopefully there will be additional forums and opportunities for us to learn each other and to
Bishop,
find out why.
Can I say something to Katie's point before Dr. Walker says something?
Yeah, I was gonna
Katie,
talk
to
about-
your point, one of the things that we want to do in this conversation is to spark some other circles. Obviously, we want to bring pastors together to talk about the millennial and the emergence of them in the church leadership, but also we want to spark conversation around just community, period, that talk about, what do we need to do and how do we synergize to make this possible. And this trek that obviously is being made, this scientific research that seems to be geared toward this generation, not only why, but what do we do with the information. It's good to have it. It's good to see it. It's good to know what we're dealing with. But then here locally, what do we need to do to make that happen? And we have a model that it does happen, but we do have to make some decisions locally. What do we do? Because we may not have some of those same opportunities right in front of us, but we do have to make some of those same decisions. And so we do have that coming, Katie, and that was part of the letter that we sent out to say, hey, this isn't the entire fire, but this is a spark that could possibly create some more conversation. So I want to make sure that we do that with different leaders.
Our initial commentary, what Katie has shared, what I've tried to share in a brief PowerPoint. Let's get now, before we get to those questions specific and some type of result. We're not going to answer everything today. We're not going to have everything resolved when we leave here today. But like you said, we spark something. And I think we spark communication, conversation. But I'd like to hear from everyone. And we'll go from, is it Walker? Back to Mary. Is it Mary? What's your first name? Marsha. To Marsha, and then back this way. And what we'll do is, just based on what has been spoken so far, based on some of the conversation that we've had so far, want everybody's input, right? You to just kind of give a general statement and a commentary from your heart, basically your view of the millennial issue, your view of the discussion so far. You don't have to be specific about that, but just your input as to why you think you're here and what you lend to us so that we all can know what's going on. Starting with Mark, then we'll come here to Marsha.
Thank you. I don't claim the stereotype millennial. I think that we're all one people, just at different stages in life. And I think that in life, we have to look internally because God called us to understand who we are first. And there are some responsibilities that if we are people of faith, the first is I think that total inclusiveness is a value of mine, total acceptance. And I think that as we accept each other, we then create an ideology where we understand that where we end up in life is dependent on where those are around us. And I use that kind of ideology as I live my life. Number one is, Judge Rice spoke about our experiences and our lived experiences. I want to underscore that as well. But also want to, when I talk about total acceptance and inclusiveness, I also want to say that there's still a level of exclusiveness within our community. And based on my life and my relationships, I want to be more present to those who are excluded. And as an African American male, and with some significant experience, there are some truths that I think that I would like to share with those around me, and as I move into the fourth quarter of life, that there are others moving into the first quarter. And so I believe that it's important then to transition or to create succession plans where I simply share my lived experiences and my understanding of life with them in a way that it may be helpful for them to move into their maturation and in becoming who God has created them to be. And I simply say that because I think that it's important for us to at least not to convince or through a series of any area of harshness to get people to believe, to get others to believe what we believe, or for me to get others to believe what I believe. I have 3 children, I have grandchildren, and I understand, and they represent all of the levels of life.
Right.
And I can say to you that I can't make anybody do anything. What I can do, and I think that what I try to practice, is to share with them my experiences, those things that I believe can be helpful, and offer them as a way, as a connecting point for them in life.
Experiences and embracing, exclusively embracing people and just sharing life with them and let them make their decisions.
Yeah, and if there's anything from my life
that could benefit
them, so be it. And I try to do it from.
This is now forming a thought before the break in that how easy it is to listen to each other, right? If nobody had a chance to say anything, but we could sit here today and listen to the wisdom that's on this panel, people who have invited here who are doing something in the community or aspiring to become something in the community, just listen. I could be a fly on the wall today, listen to you guys and formulate some theory or philosophy that could help me become a better person just by listening to you guys. If you guys didn't even know I was here, and that's what's happening to people online. They're listening to you and they're identifying with individuals. And we need to learn how to identify with each other regardless of our age, regardless of our experiences. This is life. And you've had some life experiences, as Jefferson, so let's hear it and let's live it. But to hurt, it's like sometimes a panel discussion is like herding cats. And those of you who are in media and know this, that sometimes to try to get the result that you want to get out of an interview can be rather taxing and difficult. But I sense that we're going to conclude with enough information and experience shared that we're going to leave here and Dayton's going to be better, all right? And other places are going to be better. Sister Marsha, there somewhere, but there is. But share with us, Martha, Mary. But just share with us now from the perspective. Now you've sat here for a minute and you've listened for a minute, and your experiences and what you would like to at least deposit before the break, so that maybe we can come back and chew on that a little bit and just state some things. Because I know Bishop invited you. When he invited you, you had to think, oh, millennial stuff. You didn't get the questions. I got that. You didn't get some of the concept of where we were going and what we were doing. So I just want you to just speak to the issue, just like Brother Frank just did.
I'm really curious about how millennials feel I just feel as though they've been sectioned, and I feel there's divisiveness, and that concerns me. I have two. I have a 23-year-old and a 31-year-old. And I try to get their perspective of things, and they don't really talk in terms of millennialism. They just talk about workplaces and life and what's coming and what their fears and what their joys are. But the one thing I'm curious about is the way we have been urged to figure you guys out. Do you guys take time to try to figure out baby boomers and other generations? Is that critical to you? And I'm curious about that. Are you as concerned about us as we apparently are as concerned about you? I think that's the question I want.
That's going to be good. That'll be answered. And that's kind of, listen to this borderline boom, millennial and millennials as on the panel. I said to begin with, millennials could be a misnomer. We need to remove the labels. As Brother Green just said, let's not cancel people based on a label. So let's go the young and old and everybody in between, because we're one people, and we have different experiences based on our tenure on this planet and based on the times in which we lived. All right? If you lived through the Korean War and World War II and through Vietnam, you got different experiences about life. And Judge, you were born maybe 8 years after the Great Depression of '29, and the world was still trying to rebound. Then World War I hits, and then all these different things that happened in our lifetime. That's in your lifetime. We wouldn't know anything about 47 million people killed, and we wouldn't know anything about that kind of mass destruction and this and that. It shapes our psyche, and it causes us to view the world and life differently. And so we have those experiences, and the entitlement thing comes in at Marshall when you go like, so these kids just feel like we just supposed to cater to them and help them and just learn them, and them not know us and learn us and know us. Desire the same way we're desiring to have a succession plan and make sure that you're mentored properly, and make sure that if we pass the baton to you that you won't drop it, and to make sure that you can learn from my experiences. We want you to be hungry for those experiences and hungry for that baton in a way that it's going to be passed out to you. Pat, what you think?
Well, I think all of us have varying degrees of toxicity in our own soul. I think all of us are somewhat toxic. And so I don't think anybody drank a bottle of water that's label said, 97% pure, 98% pure water, 2% sewage.
Yeah.
And so the ability to deal with the toxic issues for all of us, I think, are extremely important, creating a format for that. And I think you used a great word, the hopelessness that can attach itself to people and so forth, because they don't see a way out, or they don't see the way to the next level. Something that really should be something the church should have provided a long time ago in every social category, especially spiritually. But I think there is an answer. I think the legacy piece is an extremely important piece, as long as you yourself know where you're going, what the kingdom of God looks like, what is the potential of an individual who's in the hand of the Lord and walking in a partnership in kingdom realities and so forth. Well, what is the possibility? There is humanity, and did it with love and was compelled by compassion. And I think that's the church's responsibility for us, and how we do that. Of course, we've got a legacy piece that, my entire staff is under 35. And so I'm already in a 5-year legacy plan right now to back out and start something else. But our ability to feature what vision looks like, what it could be, don't be afraid of the toxic issues. I think maybe at this point, what we're doing right here is a piece of the equation, dealing with the toxic issues and bringing this thing back to hope again.
Sounds good. Sir.
I'll say I feel somewhat misplaced in that I'm not an executive director. I'm here representing my pastor, Apostle McGuire, who is an executive director, and I'm more so a grassroots person. I can say I've tutored several hundreds of students personally in long-time relationships, and I really don't like the terms, any of the labels, because I think it does take away from your interacting. the two things that I really want to point out was what Dr. Price said and what Marsha Bonhart also said, was that we do need to understand where they're coming from, what their environment is, but in that same way, they need to understand us. It can't be a total one-way relationship. Although we are the more mature, and being the more mature, we are the ones that are supposed to reach out and make that connection. But that connection needs to be reciprocated from them also.
Good. You got to keep in mind, we produce them. They are a result of our efforts. And we created this world that they're inheriting. And I think that this is a great format and a start to just communicate. See, I had no idea who any of you were. I met Judge before, I met Franklin before, but I had no idea who the ladies were and their perspective and where they were from. And just in my short period of time, I'm like, here's how I am. I'm like, boy, I'd like to hang out with them for a little while. Boy, I'd like for them to get to know me. Boy, I would like to pour into their life. I have a niece, a cousin, a little cousin. If I gave you a Facebook page, you'd go like, wow, she needs to be president. She is the most radical, individual, most inclusive, and the most eclectic and pluralistic person you ever want to meet in your life. So I asked her when I saw her about a week ago to come to Jacksonville from where she lives, another city, miles away. Could you come to town and spend 3 days with me? I want to pick your brain. Now, I don't want to deprogram her or reprogram. I want to pick her brain. I want to know what makes you tick like that. I need to know what's happening in your psyche. And then secondly, because I do read her blogs and stuff, I also want to answer some questions for you because you're misinformed in some areas. But I'm not coming at you as you're misinformed. I'm coming at you as you're one of the brightest. So if I get her to my home as my little cousin, she's 30, how old is Soteria? 33, 34 years old. If I can get her to my home, away from the distractions, off of social media, Instagram and Snapchat, if I can get her off of that for a minute to talk about real issues, those things that are really important, if I can do that, I think I can shape her mindset, and I think I can steer her, because I said, well, here's my message to her was, I want you to become the best you that you could be before you die. And I really want to be an asset to you and be that. I want to be a source. So when you get ready to make a strong comment as you do, I want to be a resource to you that you can run this by before you go public. And anything wrong with that? I think that is good to do, and I think that's what we're doing here today. And what's your name again? Her name. And Katie, like with Katie not being connected and affiliated strongly with the local church, she still needs the local church perspective, right? And she still needs that spiritual perspective to where she can dial into like a Bishop McGuire or somebody and say, well, here's what my convictions are here. We're about to do this right here. What do you think? So you can get a view that is larger than your own specific view. All right, so we're going to break at 11:30 in about 6 minutes. But I did want to allow you, I think you've spoken, if you want to say something else right now, and you say something else right now, and then we'll end with Judge, and then we'll take our break.
So I don't know that I'm going to add, any much more than what others have added. But first of all, I think with the millennial question, I don't think we have a millennial issue. I think we have generational challenges that, as a new generation comes, and this is the dawn of time, as a new generation comes, that new generation is built off of the accomplishments of the generation before. And so as that new generation is then trying to establish their legacy or make their mark on the world, the generation prior to is like, wait a minute, that's different from what we used to do. And then we have to work through those challenges. And I think that's what we're having now with this generation that's coming up. I think it's just the access to information because of social media, it just seems so different. Marsha asked a question about whether or not as millennials or in this younger generation, are we concerned about the older generation? And I think, when you are a teenager or when you're in your early 20s, no. I mean, the reality of it is I can do it better, I can do it faster. I tell people all the time, my daughter thinks I'm dumb as a doorknob. that's fine. But at some point, she circles back around because she runs into this challenge that she can't quite figure out on her own because she hasn't had the life experiences. And then she realizes, I'm not, in that moment, dumb. So I think that's important to note, is that we have to allow each other the space and appreciate each other's experiences, and that we can learn from one another no matter where you are in the spectrum of life. I just told my daughter yesterday, and I've told my team this, I'm going to empower you to make a decision, so you have the ability to make that decision. If you choose not to make the decision, I don't want you to complain, because I've said here, you have the power to make that decision, and what you do with that power is on you. And so I think, when we talk about this next generation that's coming up, oftentimes you have these two groups. You have the one that complains, and then you have the one that's going to do. And so I think we need to take this group of complainers and make sure that they're empowered to affect change.
Okay. We got to get to
I'm not going to be here this afternoon. But,
finish.
Hungry for opportunities. Again, I think you have these two pots. You have people that I think everybody is hungry for opportunity, is access. It's the ability to connect to the assets that they need to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And I think access to information, or lack thereof, is a critical piece to that. And I think a lot of times in our most disadvantaged communities, they don't have access to information that those of us that are in positions of power or authority do. And so a lot of times they cannot maneuver or navigate systems that would help create change in their communities. At the same time, those that are in positions of power or authority oftentimes don't look back or take the step back into our communities to really understand what those challenges are, so that when we're making decisions, we are making decisions that allow for access to opportunities so that those that are disadvantaged can take advantage of them. And I think our millennials recognize that in certain ways, because they haven't climbed up the ladder, so they still have that grassroots connection, and so their frustration comes out when they're trying to connect to being able to affect change. And then even them learning about current events. Like my daughter, the way that she gets information is through social media, Snapchat or whatever. And I'm always like, are you paying attention to what's going on in the world? And in most instances, she's not. And then this one thing pops up on Snapchat, and she starts to ask me questions. So I have to understand how she's receiving information and be prepared to give her the resources that she needs to access that information in the way that she's going to be able to own it, and then let her process through. Okay. And then the last thing I want to say, about religion, about faith, about God, about a higher power, my belief system is this. I believe that God is in all of us. There's a place in all of us, and we have our own individual relationship to that higher power, whatever you want to call it. And I believe that the way that you affect change within you and within your community is your mindset and how you connect to that. So you talk about, if you put something out in the universe, then that's going to come back to you. Well, unfortunately, we have people in our community that they have not been able to step outside of their bubble of disadvantage, of blight, of crime, of violence. And so that light looks very different from somebody else who's had the ability to see hope and step away from hopelessness. And so some kind of way we have to allow people the ability to use their connection with their higher power, with God, with that light, help them to vision something better, and then empower them to be able to affect that change. So while, when I talk about I'm probably not going to join a church, I still believe there's a connection to a higher power, and I still believe that there is the church is a resource in the community, because people need the ability to connect. That's just my preferred method of doing it.
Okay.
So,
and let me that's a lot, and I'm glad you got it out before you left. I wish there was a way that you could have stated, because we do want to address some of those personal issues. But I'm also a mentor and advisor in the marketplace to CEOs, billionaires, all this kind of stuff, and I share with them. And they listen to everything that I have to say because of my success in businesses and what I've been able to model. I'm also a professor. I'm also seminary, doctorate degree in theology, right? And I would expect those people who are seeking spiritual advice to give ear just like they do to my secular advice in business. Okay. And I say that to say you without any type of offense or anything, that you need to listen to somebody who's expert in the area of spirituality, that you trust, that you know through their lifestyle and through manifestation represents God properly. And the same way you would take my advice on your business and what you do in your center and where you work, if I was professional and expert in that area, you need to also listen in that area. Because basically your general concept of God consciousness and people, everybody in God, is a little skewed as far as if we're going to work together and make some things happen. So we have to agree on some things, and I think that if you would lend yourself to a spiritual mentor who really does have a right relationship with God, and you can see in their life that they're really manifesting this thing, and they're not some bully pulpit type of person that's just beating people over the head with the word and excluding everybody and saying this is the only way, and if you don't do this, you go to hell. But somebody that can embrace what they don't endorse and preach a message that's consistent and accurate, can explain the word of God in clarity, and can model for you a lifestyle that says, no, God is not just up there, over there somewhere in all of us. And this are the children of God manifest and the children of the devil. Everybody is not a child of God. And I think that is something that can be expounded on and shared personally to where we can look at it and show it, not just in the Bible, but in life in general. So I would say to you on that wise, you got a bevy of information. And you are, I see why you say you're on the cusp. You're a little weird because you are of the generation prior, and since you have some disciplines, but you have a millennial mindset, and you fit that millennial pattern more than probably anybody on this panel, right? Kind of a paradox, you know, and there's something about you that I like, and there's something about you that I would like to have an opportunity to develop a relationship and kind of be to you a sounding board and a spiritual advisor in your pursuit of your spirituality. That could be the most important thing for this community, because this is a spiritual warfare. What's going on out here is a mindset, and it's spiritual. And we got to combat that. And we can combat that together if we get on the same page. So if you let me as general handle the spiritual aspect of it, and you handle the physical, the temporal aspect of it, we can work together and make something happen. But don't try to do both if you don't understand both worlds. And that would be my advice to you in a loving way as a father. I look at you as a father like, we want to give you a big hug and say, girl, I wish I was in this city. Could I get you? And I'll let you come. You'll want to come to church. I promise you. You'll be like, I'm going to the Potter's house. I'm going. Not just to the physical building, but to the people. Because Monday through Sunday, our activity starts after the benediction. Hundreds of people all day, thousands, every day coming through there. Mass transit. It's an epicenter for the community with social services and outreaches and all this stuff going on. That's the church. And when you can see that and do that, and you get those answers to those spiritual questions that you may have because of the abuse that we probably see, the way we were raised in church at all. These are just buildings. So when people drive down and say there's a church on every corner, no, there's a building on every corner. The church is people. And so we need to remember that, all right? And you're so precious. You sit there. Are you a twin? Yeah. He said, you're a twin. I just hugged somebody that looked like you. There they are. And what did I call? You know what I said to her? I said, you are so beautiful. I said, and you know you are too. And she like, yes. Then I look up here and there you are again. And you know you are too. Got that little cute thing going on. But go ahead.
I just want to reiterate what Judge Rice said about how it's important that we listen and we just build this this culture of just listening and building relationship. You know, there's so much power in just being personable. Even as I was ending my last year of college, I learned that superintendents and even former principals said the main thing that they look for when hiring people is they want people that are personable. It's good that you know all of the content, but are you personable? Are you going to relate to people? And I think that's something that millennials need to be connected. And so even in the church, millennials are more likely to buy something because of someone else's testimony about it, not because it's the best thing out there, not because there's educated critics about this being the best product. It's because they heard a friend say this is what the best thing is. And so I think it's important that relationships are built even in the church. That's why it's important to know the heart of pastors, to know the heart of a judge. Why did you become a judge? It wasn't just to sentence people, but it was to affect the community. Why did you, become a police officer? It wasn't to arrest people, but it was to help people feel safe. And I think when we know the heart of people and we have that relationship with people, it will change our mindset. And even with the mistrust of maybe police officers, because it takes one police officer to make a mistake in New York, and everyone in Dayton is a bad police officer. But when I have someone in my mind, I say, okay, well, I know Judge Rice is a man who wants to listen to me. Okay, now every judge is not bad because I know at least one. Right. And so I think having those relationships, where the pastors are always trying to criticize us, but I have a pastor that listens to me above all else. And so I thank God for my pastor, Bishop Mark McGuire, because I know he cares. And so he's standing to negate every stereotypical pastor. And I think when we have those people we can look to, I think it will affect change. And even just having that one person, that one man, that one woman that is imparting something different or setting a fire will get everybody else on fire and get everybody else to change.
That is powerful. And that's exactly what we're trying to present here today. You hit the nail on the head that all millennials are not like this. All baby boomers are not like this. All millennials or people in this age group, and I think the best word to use is this generation. That's dominant generation, because these people in this age group are the dominant generation. So we changed from millennials to generation. We've already done that. We call it the next generation, and it'll always be the next generation and the next generation and the next generation without a label. But I think that if somebody like myself, Pat, different people that were here would just say, hey, we don't fit that mold of what you might think. We're not out to get you. I mean, we want to get you in the sense that we want to know you. We want to get you. We want to know where you're coming from, and we want to listen. That's why I linked myself to Kate. I was like, hey, girl, if you need me, here's my number. You call me. If some stuff going down spiritually that you got questions about, you don't have to Google. You don't have to go online. You don't have to go into Snapchat. You don't have to go on a blog, on Facebook, and listen to people who are not accurate, who are not good at what they do. I said, if I'm expert in business, which we've proven, and then if I'm expert in religion and in religious studies, which I've proven, then if you can listen to me in business, please listen to me spiritually. Because it's, just trust. It's find somebody that you can plug into, that you can look at and go, I'm going to vet them, I'm going to study them, I'm going to Google them, I'm going to find out everything I can about them, and then go, oh, man, I need to listen to them. And so, Judge, we conclude with you because you did. You kind of rocked my world a little bit with your sensitivity and your commentary concerning, We started with him, and then went here, and we came all the way back around. Now we're back to the judge. Were you paying attention? Okay. Did you? There was something you wanted to say, Judge? Oh. Okay. He started off the rotation, and we said we would come back to the judge. And I like your comment about, Judge didn't want to become a judge because he wanted to lock people up, even though but no, he serves our community, and I've already given the scriptures that we are to obey them, we'll be subject to them, the higher powers, we're to work with them. They're not given to us at a detriment, but they benefit us, they protect us. And Judge, as the senior wisdom on the panel, we conclude our session before we take this break now with your final words on this juncture at this state of where we are right now.
He referred to me as the senior wisdom, which means he thinks I'm the oldest person.
Same thing. Yeah.
And I accept that. First of all, thank you for this morning. It was a mind-stretching exercise, and I'm grateful for it. And I have so much respect for everyone here. I'm going to be very brief, and I'm going to stress, well, let me start in a different way. There is one stereotype of millennials that I don't reject, and that is, by and large, they are far more accepting of superficial differences between us. They're not hung up on such meaningless differences such as race, gender, sexual preference, and I cannot tell you how much admiration I have for them for that, and that bodes well for our future. But I want to emphasize the importance of experiences, knowing each other's experiences and realizing that those experiences shape our perspectives. We all grew up at different times in different social climates, and we were raised differently. Let me give you a perfect example of what I mean by experiences. Let's assume, for sake of argument, that I want to get involved trying to improve relations between the police and the community, which are not good here and are not good in any urban community in the country. If I'm trying to achieve something, trying to affect reconciliation, then if I don't realize either before I get involved or very, very quickly thereafter that I, who was raised in a middle-class white neighborhood, have a far different set of experiences with police, a far different set of perspectives and stereotypes than someone who was raised in inner-city African-American community, then I'm a fool, and I'm going to be incredibly unsuccessful. Now, if I can understand those differences, those life's experiences, maybe I can be more helpful. Thank you.
That's powerful. Here's what Judge Wright said, and it's and said, we don't really care, millennials, about the color of your skin, what country you're from, or what gender you belong to, what gender you are attracted to, or even what God you pray to, if any at all. While the rest of our nation remains divided over these things, millennials aren't so divided. And he goes on to say, and when we take over, this will help us to resolve these issues far more easily than it is today. That is the sentiment of a blogger that Pew Research decided that they would lift out of its context and share with the rest of the world, because that is a picture of these millennials. And that is a picture of kind of a peep into where we're going and how we're going to get there. As evangelicals and as evangelical Christians, as myself as a pastor, I'm as nervous about that commentary as I want to be, even though I know it's a reality. And I know that's where we're headed. And so it is my job to impact the millennial generation, if I can use that term, to help shape these morals and help shape their decision making as it relates to these things. Not necessarily to have to see things exactly the way I see it, but to impact them so that they can make better judgment, bottom line. And so I'm learning today, and I want to be impacting to where I can help people make better judgments for the future. So if I can impact a millennial, somebody in that age group, even up to 40 years old, or almost 40, 39 and plus, on their way there, if I can, as Dr. Franklin said, just share my experiences with them, then I think I've done my job. Even today, you know, I can't even imagine afternoon session. I think we need to probably make some shifting on what we're going to do today. Which one of the panel members are going to be able to be here for the afternoon? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. All righty. So we're going to break. Bishop McGuire, you want to give us directions on our break here? Let's put our hands together for these panel members. Woo! I feel good. I feel good.
Quite simple. We're just going to take a break. We'll come back about, want to do a half hour? Or hour?
Is there a snack or lunch? So what is it?
Yes, sir. What time, how long did you want to come back before you came back?
Dinner.
It was scheduled for 1 o'clock. Is that fine?
Yeah, it's scheduled for 1 o'clock. What time? We were breaking at 11:30, right?
Yes, sir.
And it's 11:45. Why are we going to take it to 30 minutes?
Well, just trying to be mindful of those that wanted to come back on the second half of the break.
Hey, I told you it's a long day, didn't it? Yeah.
Well, no, I'm fine, but just do we want to come back at 1 o'clock?
We got to have time to eat, right? Yeah, we got to have at least an hour.
Okay, well, we'll be back at 1 p.m.
But I mean, that'd be 12:45. I said you got to have at least an hour. It's 11:44 now. We come back in at least an hour for lunch.
Okay, we'll take an hour and 1 minute. Come back at 12:45 p.m. And all those that can come back for session 2, we welcome you to come back. There are some things for sale downstairs. You don't have to go far. If you want to get lunch downstairs, all of our panelists are welcome to the green room, and then we'll be back at 12:45.
Or 1.
On point.
Or 1.
Or 1. Between 12:45 and 1.
Mic check. 1, 2. 1, 1, 1, 2. Mic check. 1, 1, 2.